The twisted wreckage of the small passenger plane still smoked in the middle of the open field as frightened survivors cried for help, but one exhausted single father ignored the flames, the danger, and his own bleeding hands to carry an unconscious stranger to safety. He had no idea that the woman he refused to leave behind would return only days later with the legal authority to take away the only home his daughter had ever known. Sometimes the greatest act of kindness seems to invite the deepest heartbreak before it reveals the miracle waiting on the other side. That if you believe kindness always matters, even when life feels unfair, please like this video, leave a comment, share this story with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our growing community that believes in forgiveness, compassion, and second chances. Graham Mercer had learned long ago that life rarely rewarded good people immediately. Ever since losing his wife, Clara, to an unexpected illness 5 years earlier, every sunrise had begun with responsibility instead of comfort. His 12-year-old daughter, Elsie, depended on him for everything. He packed her school lunches before dawn, repaired neighbors' fences for extra money after working his regular job maintaining county roads, cooked simple dinners, helped with homework, and somehow still found enough energy to smile whenever she looked worried. Their small farmhouse stood on 3 acres outside the quiet town of Ashbrook. The old white paint peeled from the porch rails, the roof needed replacing, and the barn leaned slightly to one side, but every board carried memories. Clara had planted wildflowers beside the mailbox. Elsie had taken her first bicycle ride across the gravel driveway. Graham still measured his daughter's height every birthday on the kitchen doorway. The house wasn't worth much to anyone else, but to them it was everything. Financial hardship had slowly crept into their lives after Clara's medical bills emptied their savings. Graham had refinanced the mortgage twice, believing every difficult season would eventually pass. Then inflation, rising interest rates, and reduced overtime at work left him several months behind on payments. The local bank had issued a final foreclosure notice. He had 60 days to find a miracle. Despite the burden hanging over him, Graham never stopped helping others. His neighbors often joked that he would give away his last sandwich before admitting he was hungry. He simply shrugged whenever anyone thanked him. He believed his daughter watched everything he did, and he wanted her to grow into someone who measured success by compassion instead of possessions. One clear autumn afternoon, Graham was repairing a damaged guardrail near a small regional airport when a terrible roar shattered the peaceful sky. He looked up just in time to see a twin-engine commuter aircraft struggling to stay airborne. Smoke streamed from one engine as the plane dipped dangerously low. Within seconds it clipped a line of trees beyond the runway, bounced violently across an open pasture, and finally slid to a stop in a shower of dirt and twisted metal. Without thinking, Graham threw down his tools and sprinted toward the wreckage. Emergency crews were still several minutes away. Survivors stumbled from broken exits while others remained trapped inside. Flames flickered beneath one wing. Ignoring the heat and the fear pounding inside his chest, Graham climbed into the damaged cabin. He helped an elderly passenger crawl free before spotting a woman pinned beneath a collapsed overhead compartment. She wore an expensive business suit now stained with ash and blood. Though unconscious, she still clutched a leather folder against her chest as if protecting something important. Using every ounce of strength he had, Graham forced the twisted metal aside just enough to pull her free. The effort tore the muscles in his shoulder, but he refused to let go. He carried her across the field moments before thick black smoke swallowed the section where she had been trapped. Seconds later, part of the cabin erupted into flames. As paramedics rushed in, Graham quietly stepped away. He never asked the woman's name. He never waited for recognition. After giving a brief statement, he returned to work because overtime pay meant groceries for the week. News stations praised the anonymous local hero who had rescued multiple passengers. Graham avoided interviews. Elsie, however, proudly recognized her father from blurry television footage. She hugged him tighter than ever when he came home, pretending not to notice the pain in his injured shoulder. 3 days later another letter arrived from the bank. The foreclosure process would move forward immediately because the property had been purchased by a financial investment group restructuring distressed loans. Graham stared at the paperwork until the words blurred together. The new owner had scheduled an inspection of the property that Friday afternoon. Elsie quietly found him sitting on the porch holding the letter. She didn't ask questions. She simply rested her head against his arm. Graham smiled through his worry because children deserved hope, even when adults weren't sure where to find it. Friday arrived beneath bright blue skies. A sleek black SUV rolled into the driveway. Graham expected lawyers or property managers. Instead, a woman stepped out wearing a simple navy blazer. A faint scar crossed her forehead, partially hidden beneath her hair. She paused when she recognized the man standing beside the porch. It was the woman from the plane crash. Her name was Vivian Hartley. She had spent years building a reputation as one of the country's youngest financial executives. After surviving the crash, she had immediately returned to work, determined not to let the accident interrupt an important acquisition. Her company specialized in purchasing struggling regional banks before restructuring them into profitable institutions. One of those banks happened to hold Graham's mortgage. Neither of them spoke for several moments. Vivian finally understood why the face that had haunted her recovery seemed so familiar. Hospital staff had told her an unknown man had carried her from the burning aircraft. She had searched for him without success. Now she was standing on the front porch of the person who had saved her life while preparing paperwork that could leave his family homeless. The irony hit her harder than the crash itself. She entered the house to conduct the required inspection, but every room told a story impossible to ignore. Family photographs lined the hallway. Hand-sewn curtains framed the kitchen window. Children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Nothing about the home reflected luxury. Everything reflected love. Elsie politely offered homemade lemonade, unaware of the complicated emotions filling the room. Vivian accepted the glass and noticed the careful way Graham concealed his injured shoulder whenever he reached for something. Company policy demanded objectivity. Distressed properties were numbers on balance sheets. Yet no spreadsheet had ever shown a little girl proudly displaying her science fair ribbon or a father quietly repairing cracked furniture because buying new pieces wasn't possible. Vivian returned to headquarters carrying far more than inspection notes. During the following week she reviewed Graham's file repeatedly. Technically, foreclosure was legal. Financially, it made sense. Morally, something felt deeply wrong. Her senior partners pushed for immediate repossession. The property could be sold to a commercial developer planning a logistics center outside town. The profit would exceed any repayment plan Graham could realistically manage. For the first time in her career, Vivian challenged the recommendation. Her colleagues argued that emotions had no place in banking. She surprised herself by answering that perhaps that belief explained why so many communities no longer trusted financial institutions. She proposed an alternative restructuring program allowing hardworking families facing temporary hardship to remain in their homes while rebuilding financial stability. The board dismissed the idea as unrealistic. Vivian couldn't stop thinking about the smoke-filled cabin, the man who had risked everything without asking whether she deserved saving, and the little girl who still believed adults always tried to do the right thing. Meanwhile, Graham quietly prepared for the inevitable. He began packing boxes whenever Elsie was at school. Each item carried another memory. Clara's favorite baking dish. Elsie's first pair of tiny rain boots. The blanket his wife had sewn before their daughter was born. One sunny afternoon Elsie accidentally discovered the packed boxes in the attic. She didn't cry. Instead, she carried down a faded family photograph and placed it beside Graham. She wrote a small note beneath it that simply read, "Home isn't walls. Home is whoever never gives up on you." Those words broke something inside him. Across town, Vivian attended one final board meeting regarding the foreclosure portfolio. Before the vote, she placed an old newspaper clipping on the conference table. It showed the aftermath of the plane crash alongside security camera images identifying the anonymous rescuer. She calmly explained that the man whose home they planned to seize had saved her life without expecting recognition, compensation, or gratitude. She admitted that personal history alone should not dictate business decisions, but character should matter. She argued that banks existed not only to protect assets but to strengthen communities. The room remained silent. Then one older board member quietly asked how many other families resembled Graham's. Thousands. The question changed everything. instead of approving immediate foreclosure, the board authorized a pilot hardship recovery program. Eligible homeowners demonstrating consistent effort could receive modified loans, reduced interest, and financial counseling rather than eviction. Graham became the first participant. When Vivian returned to his farmhouse under another bright afternoon sky, Graham assumed she had come to deliver the final notice. Instead, she handed him entirely different documents. His mortgage had been restructured into affordable payments. Penalties had been removed. Missed fees were forgiven. Better yet, the new community program would help dozens of other struggling families avoid losing their homes under similar circumstances. Graham struggled to understand what he was reading. Vivian admitted that saving one house mattered, but changing the system mattered even more. His kindness had forced her to see people where she had once seen only paperwork. Months passed, the farmhouse slowly came back to life. Volunteers from town helped repair the roof after hearing Graham's story. The leaning barn was reinforced. Wildflowers bloomed again along the driveway. Graham continued working, gradually rebuilding his finances with renewed hope. Vivian visited occasionally, not as an executive inspecting collateral but as a friend welcomed for Sunday lunches on the porch. She established a charitable foundation supporting families recovering from unexpected financial crises and encouraged other banks to adopt similar hardship programs. The greatest transformation belonged to Elsie. Watching adults choose compassion over pride taught her that one courageous decision could ripple outward into countless lives. Years later she often said the richest people weren't those who owned the most money but those whose kindness kept multiplying long after they walked away. The plane crash remained the worst day many survivors had ever experienced, yet hidden inside that tragedy was an unexpected chain of mercy. One exhausted father had chosen compassion over fear. One successful executive had chosen conscience over convenience. Entire families would remain in their homes because two strangers crossed paths in a field beneath the afternoon sun. Before this story comes to its close, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a meaningful comment sharing whether you believe a single act of kindness can truly change someone's life, even if the reward doesn't come right away. As Graham stood beside Elsie watching golden sunlight wash across the field surrounding the farmhouse, he finally understood something Clara had always believed. Kindness never guarantees an easy road, but it plants seeds that often bloom where we least expect them. Sometimes the person we rescue today becomes the one who rescues us tomorrow, and sometimes the greatest miracle isn't avoiding hardship but discovering that compassion has the power to transform hearts, rewrite futures, and remind us that hope is always stronger than despair. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Until next time, thank you for being part of our community, where every story reminds us that kindness, forgiveness, and second chances still have the power to change the world.